Hello, I'm Roger Dove, and here we are in my garden at home, where I'm doing a small series of videos to try to answer all the questions that you've been sending in to me, which it gives me great pleasure to do. As you know, I love communicating with you. I love hearing your questions, so I hope you find my answers useful, fascinating, and enlightening. Let's see what happens. Bisla has asked me on Instagram, how am I passing my time during lockdown? Is it more difficult to be creative? I think a lot of creativity comes from just being able to have time to stop to think. Sometimes you can get so caught up in the busyness of every day you have no time to think and be creative. So I would say that being able to spend time in my home, in my garden, in my own thoughts is serving me very well. Let's see what comes in the future, see if you agree too. Buzz.mp4 has asked me on Instagram, what's my favourite part of the creative process? I would have to say when I know that it's finished. That might sound silly, but you have an idea and then you expand on the idea. You then have to think of every element of the idea, and then you start working on the scent. And so you have to hope that the scent ends up working with the idea. One of the things many people say is that when they smell my creations and then understand the story, that they feel there's a fit. That's something I've always been really proud of. So it can be frustrating when things don't come together. So the answer to the question is, as enjoyable as the entire creative process is, there is nothing more fantastic than seeing the very, very first bottle in its package when you know that every single thing you've worked on comes together and that it works. Kristin Kazaril has asked me on Instagram, what keeps me on track? And I would say the answer to that is really very, very simple. I've always said, please don't take me too seriously, because I don't. I think that too many people get caught up in their own petard. I hope I never do. I hope I'm always grounded. And so that's the answer to your question. Is that all right? Yeah. Sac1608 has asked me on Instagram, which classical pieces inspired me most? I would have to say it's the work of the Ballet Russe and Diaghilev. I've always done a lot with the Victoria and Albert Museum, and when they put on a major exhibition to do with the Ballet Russe, I was asked would I be prepared to give a keynote lecture. I've always loved Diaghilev. I think that he broke really every single rule imaginable, and really was responsible for creating a lot of what we know as modernity today. So I spoke to them about the thing of making a scent to go along with my talk. It was the first time to our knowledge that any perfumer had ever made a perfume to go with an exhibition at a major museum anywhere in the world. It was a philanthropic project. I'm thrilled to say that it worked enormously because it was really uncharted water. The scent became a small cult in a way, and it really was a risk because my name wasn't as well known around the world as it is today. And so we started to get people writing to us saying, why do you not have this perfume anymore? Because it was a limited edition just to support the exhibition. In 2011, I think I went to Russia for the very first time, and an idea came to me when I had a private tour inside the Kremlin that I would relaunch Diaghilev in a collection which today is called the Imperial Collection. And the rest, I think, the saying goes, is history. So without question, the work of the great impresario Diaghilev and all of the ballets that came under the Ballet Russe. Craig Rattigan has asked, has the pandemic affected our industry? It has, of course, affected everybody and everything. Basically, every store around the world is closed, so customers can't go into shops to buy or try perfumes. Some of the manufacturers have closed, who actually produce the products, so like the candle makers. However, the positive way that it's affected the industry, I've spoken about many times, because I think it's ended up really inspiring people to get more and more involved in the online communities. So the experiences of sharing perfumes, sharing reviews of perfumes, critiquing them, inspiring, has come into its own as people have the time to do it. I think the world will eventually revert back to normal. Who knows? People talk about the new normal. I don't know quite what that is. Nobody does. But the one thing which is ingrained in everybody, even deeper, I believe, is how immersive perfume is and how kind perfume is, and that it treats us all wonderfully well, takes us to great places, so when times are ugly, spray a little bit of perfume and you're transported to places you love and put back in the arms of people you adore. So yes, it has had a big impact on it, practically slightly negatively, but from an emotional point of view, I think it's engaged people to a level which we couldn't have dreamt of. Tayubi95 has asked a really interesting question on Instagram to do with alcohol and the ingredients. The question is the alcohol going to evaporate immediately, basically as soon as the scent is put on the skin, or does it evaporate over hours? And is it the alcohol that's responsible for the scent's projection, or is it the oils that are left and the synthetic materials which are combined? So the answer is this. There are different grades of alcohol used in perfumery, and depending on the concentration of the scent, often water is added too. In all the Roger Parfum creations, I never use water, they only have alcohol, and the alcohol is at an incredibly high percentage. It is in fact 100% proof. The reason for such a high volume of alcohol is that you need the alcohol to be able to cut into the oils to help them evaporate. But that evaporation happens immediately. So fundamentally, once the scent feels dry and all that's left on your skin is the feel of oil, it is because all the alcohol is gone. So depending on how you spray it, that's going to happen in a few seconds or a few minutes. It's why when you first spray a scent that often it can feel too much under your nose because so much is evaporating, including the volume of alcohol. As to do with how the scent lasts on the skin, which isn't quite what you've asked, but it's how I understand the question, I think that it's really important to understand that the more natural materials, generally the softer the perfume will be. When you think of scents with enormous volume and enormous projection, and that projection lasts for hours and hours and hours, it is generally because the scent has a very high proportion of synthetic raw materials in. So there isn't a hard and fast rule to the end of that, but I would say that a scent which is soft, but which lasts for literally up to all day on your skin, will only do it because the scent has a huge volume of naturals. A scent which is constantly there, almost monolithic, is because it has a huge volume of synthetics. I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, just trying to answer your question. With all of the Roger Parfum creations, the synthetics are there normally to enhance the particular qualities of a natural. They're never there to replace them. So alcohol gives the first impression, bright, burst, huge diffusion. The alcohol evaporates, leaves the scent on the skin. Depending on whether you still have diffusion or not, is down more to synthetics than it is to naturals. Sahil Narang has asked me on Instagram, how do I manage to get the DNA of the scents to work? How do I come up with the DNA, and how does the DNA work with the creative idea? I think it's very simple that before you start doing anything, you need to end up knowing what you want in the end. That said, along the journey, sometimes things can be so surprising they take you off in a new direction. But I have to be really clear of what is in my mind as an end effect. So, for example, with the perfumes Parfum de la Nuit 1, 2 and 3, excuse me, I had to stop and have an idea. Perfumes of the night, what's that all about? Sensuality and seduction. So what type of materials for me make me think of sensuality and seduction? So I created an amber accord with ambergris in the core of it. They became the DNA for that particular collection. And then I thought of what should these three perfumes be? So number one was all about somebody who seduces because they have great strength of character. I ended up thinking what type of material gives great strength of character. For me, that was leather. Number two was about somebody who seduces through softness that almost you don't even know they've done it. So I thought of playing on the more ambery elements, pushing the vanillic and benzoin notes. And then the last of them was the idea of somebody who seduces because they're exotic. So I thought to put materials in which are not commonplace, which take you off to strange and unusual places. What's interesting with that, wherever I have told that story anywhere in the world and given people the sense to smell, I say with the third one, it will take you away from whichever city I happen to be in whichever country. And always people agree it's exactly that. So the story has to be clear in my mind. That gives me the idea of the type of effect I want from the scent. That gives me the idea of the type of raw materials that need to be there. And because I'm also involved in every element of the design, whether that's the label, the box, or the end imagery we create, you have something which is totally and utterly coherent. If the idea weren't clear in my mind, I wouldn't be able to come up with the DNA, and therefore the thing wouldn't work. Because I'm involved in every single element, I think what you have are really cohesive stories, and people seem to be able to relate and understand that.